I've been the night clerk at the Flamingo Heights Casino for 6 months. There's one rule they didn't put in writing, but everyone knows. Ever send housekeeping to room 1408. The last maid who went in was in 1983. She came out aged 20 years in 20 minutes, her hair completely white. She kept saying the guest needed more towels. The guest who's been dead since 1969. Night, a new maid who didn't know the rule went up. That was 3 hours ago. My name is Marcus Webb, and I work the graveyard shift at the Flamingo Heights Casino and Hotel in Las Vegas, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Sunday through Thursday. The pay is good, $28 an hour, plus tips from drunk gamblers who occasionally win big and feel generous. After my divorce cleaned me out, and my accounting firm downsized me out of a job, I needed something that paid well and asked no questions about the 5-year gap in my employment history. Night clerk at a mid-tier Vegas casino hotel fit perfectly. The Flamingo Heights isn't on the Strip. It's one of those locals casinos that tourists only find when they're lost or looking for cheaper tables. Built in 1965, expanded in 1969, renovated in 1988, and then left to slowly decay while maintaining just enough glitz to keep the gambling addicts coming back. We have 347 rooms, though if you check the system, it only shows 346 available. Room 1408 is always occupied. I noticed it my first week. Every other room would cycle through guests, sometimes 3 or 4 different check-ins per day on weekends. But 1408 never changed. Same guest name, Vincent Marcelli. Same check-in date, November 7th, 1969. The room charge was astronomical, over $4.7 million at this point, increasing by $130 every single day. Room rate plus taxes, plus some mysterious service charges that weren't itemized. I asked my supervisor, Janet Chen, about it during my second week. She was a woman in her 60s who'd worked at the Flamingo Heights since 1987 and had seen everything Vegas could throw at a person. When I mentioned room 1408, her expression went flat. "That room is not your concern," she said, not looking up from her scheduling paperwork. "The guest has a special arrangement with management. We don't discuss it. We don't ask about it. And we absolutely never, under any circumstances, send anyone to that room. Not housekeeping, not maintenance, not security. No one. But the bill," I started, "is paid. That's all you need to know. The charge processes every night at 11:47 p.m. You'll see it on your shift report. Just ignore it and move on." I tried to ignore it. But working night shift at a casino hotel, you have a lot of downtime between dealing with drunk guests and the occasional prostitute trying to work the lobby. I started researching Vincent Marcelli. What I found made my skin crawl. Vincent Marcelli was a mob lawyer from Chicago who came to Vegas on November 7th, 1969. He checked into room 1408 at the Flamingo Heights, which had just opened its new tower expansion that same day. According to newspaper archives, he was found dead in the room the next morning. The official cause was heart attack, but the crime beat reporters hinted at something else. Suicide, some said. Murder, others whispered. The room had been locked from the inside, but Marcelli was found with playing cards arranged around his body in a pattern that one reporter described as deeply disturbing, though the pattern itself was never detailed in print. The hotel should have cleaned out the room, processed his belongings, and moved on. But according to the employment records I managed to access through the ancient computer system, every single person who entered room 1408 after Marcelli's death quit within a week. No explanations, no notice. They just walked off the job. By 1975, management stopped trying to use the room. By 1981, they stopped sending people to check on it. By 1983, after the incident with the maid Maria Gonzalez, they made it official policy. Room 1408 was off limits, but the charges kept processing. Every night at 11:47 p.m. exactly, I watched it happen during my shifts. The system would update automatically. Room service, $230. The credit card on file had expired in 1972, but somehow the charges went through. I tried to look up the card details once, but the screen went black and displayed only one message: do not investigate. When the screen came back, I was logged out of the system. 3 months into the job, I started noticing other things. The elevator would sometimes go to the 14th floor on its own, late at night when no one had pressed the button. Security cameras in that hallway showed nothing but static from 11:47 p.m. to 11:48 p.m. every night. The few times guests were accidentally assigned to rooms on the 14th floor, they'd come back down within minutes, pale and shaking, demanding a different room. They never said why. The old-timers who worked the casino had stories. Tommy, the bartender, said he'd seen a man in a 1960s suit walking through the casino floor at 3 a.m., heading for the elevators. When Tommy followed him, the man disappeared at the 14th floor. Sarah from the slot section swore she'd heard jazz music from 1408 some nights, the kind they played in Vegas lounges in the 60s. And Miguel, the head of security, once told me that the hotel's owners had tried to seal off room 1408 in 1991. The construction workers they hired refused to finish the job. They said something was living in the walls, but nothing prepared me for what happened tonight. Her name was Rosa, a new hire from Honduras who barely spoke English, but cleaned rooms like she was on a mission from God. She'd only been working here a week, the night housekeeping shift, because it paid an extra $3 an hour. Nobody had told her about room 1408. Maybe they assumed someone else would. Maybe they forgot that not everyone knew the unwritten rules. It started at 11:15 p.m. Rosa came to the front desk with her card, checking her list. "Sir," she said in broken English, "room 1408, they call for extra towels." "I go now." My blood went cold. "No, Rosa, that room doesn't need service." "But they call. They say urgent." I checked the phone log. There was no record of any call from 1408. There hadn't been a call from that room since 1969, according to the system. "Rosa, listen to me. Do not go to that room. It's off limits." But she was already heading for the elevator, pushing her cart with determination. I called after her, but she either didn't hear or didn't want to hear. The elevator doors closed with her inside. I watched the floor indicator. It went up steadily. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It stopped at 14. I called security. Miguel wasn't on duty, but his second in command, Big Dave, answered. "We got a problem," I said. "Rosa from housekeeping went to 1408. There was silence on the other end. Then Dave said 2 words that chilled me. "Oh, shit." I watched the security monitor for the 14th floor. Static. It was 11:20 p.m., 27 minutes before the usual static time. The static was spreading to other cameras too, working its way down from 14 to 13 to 12. Dave arrived at the front desk sweating despite the air conditioning. "We need to go up there," he said. Janet appeared from the back office, her face pale. "Nobody goes to the 14th floor," she said firmly. "Rosa's up there," I said. Janet closed her eyes, seemed to be weighing something in her mind. Then she pulled out a key I'd never seen before, old-fashioned brass with an ornate handle. "This is the master key to the 14th floor," she said. "It's the only way to override the elevator lockout. If you're going up there, you need to understand something. The 14th floor isn't like the rest of the hotel. It exists in a different space. Time moves differently there. What feels like minutes here could be hours there, or vice versa. And room 1408, she paused. Room 1408 is hungry. It's been feeding on Vincent Marcelli for 55 years, but he's almost used up. It wants fresh meat." "I'm going," I said. "Rosa doesn't deserve whatever's happening to her." Dave nodded. "I'm going too. Nobody gets left behind on my watch." Janet handed me the key. "You have until 11:47, she said. "When the charges process, the room resets. If you're inside when that happens, you become part of the inventory. You become part of what it's feeding on. You understand me? Get in. Get Rosa. Get out. Don't look at anything too closely. Don't touch anything you don't have to. And whatever you do, don't let Vincent Marcelli talk to you." "He's dead," Dave said. Janet's expression was grim. "That hasn't stopped him from ordering room service for 55 years. Dave and I took the service elevator, the one behind the kitchen that most guests never see. Janet's brass key fit into a slot I'd never noticed before, hidden behind a panel that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. The elevator groaned to life, moving slower than usual, like it was struggling against gravity itself. "The 14th floor," Dave muttered, checking his flashlight even though the hotel had perfectly good lighting. "Man, I've been here 8 years, and I've never been up there. Heard stories, though." "You hear the stories, Marcus?" "Some of them," I said, watching the floor indicator climb. The elevator felt colder with each floor we passed. By the time we hit 12, I could see my breath. "They say the 14th floor is a snapshot," Dave continued, his nervousness making him talk. "Frozen in time from November 8th, 1969. The day they found Marcelli. Everything up there is exactly as it was that morning. The wallpaper, the carpet, even the ashtrays still have cigarette butts from 55 years ago." The elevator dinged softly as we reached 14. The doors didn't open immediately. For a moment, I thought they were stuck. Then slowly, grudgingly, they parted to reveal a hallway that shouldn't exist. Dave was right about it being frozen in time. The wallpaper was a gaudy gold and brown pattern that screamed late 60s. The carpet was orange shag, thick enough to lose your shoes in. The lighting came from fixtures that had been replaced in the rest of the hotel decades ago, giving everything a yellowish tint like an old photograph. But it was the smell that hit me first. Cigarette smoke, fresh and acrid, like someone had just finished a pack of Lucky Strikes. Underneath that, something else. Something sweet and rotten, like fruit that had been left to decay for years, but somehow hadn't dried out. Rosa's cart was sitting in the middle of the hallway, abandoned. The towels she'd brought were scattered on the floor, but they looked different, older. The white fabric had yellowed, and the Flamingo Heights logo was the old one from the 60s, not our current design. "Rosa," I called out. My voice seemed to die just a few feet from my mouth, absorbed by the thick carpet and heavy air. We started down the hallway. Room 1401, 1402, 1403. All the doors were closed, but I could hear things behind them. Television shows with laugh tracks from programs that went off the air before I was born. Music from a radio station that had changed formats 3 times since 1969. And underneath it all, a sound like breathing, as if the entire floor was inhaling and exhaling. Room 1408 was at the end of the hallway. The door was different from the others. While every other door showed age, wear, the patina of decades, 1408's door looked brand new. The brass numbers gleamed like they'd just been polished. The wood was rich and dark, without a single scratch or scuff. The door was open about 6 inches. Through the gap, I could see flickering light, like a television was on. I could hear voices too, a man laughing, ice clinking in glasses, and underneath it all, a woman crying. It sounded like Rosa. I reached for the door handle, but Dave grabbed my arm. "Wait," he said. "Look at your watch." I checked my phone. 11:31 p.m. We had 16 minutes before the room reset, whatever that meant. "We go in together," Dave said. "We grab Rosa. We don't look at anything else. We get out. Ready?" I nodded. We pushed the door open. Room 1408 was impossible. From the outside, it should have been a standard hotel room, maybe 600 square feet. But inside, it stretched on and on, a suite that seemed to go back forever. The decor shifted and changed the deeper you looked, cycling through different eras. The front was pure 1969, with wood paneling and a conversation pit. Further back, I could see sections that looked like the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, as if the room had been redecorating itself over and over for 55 years. But keeping every version, Vincent Marcelli was sitting in a leather chair near the window, facing away from us. He was wearing a dark suit, perfectly pressed. A cigarette burned in an ashtray beside him, the smoke rising in a perfect line despite the air conditioning. His hand, resting on the arm of the chair, was moving, fingers tapping out some rhythm only he could hear. Rosa was on her knees beside his chair, frozen in place. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing, tears streaming down her face. She looked older somehow, like she'd aged years in the minutes she'd been here. Her dark hair had streaks of gray that hadn't been there before. "Rosa," I said, stepping into the room. "We're here to get you out." Vincent Marcelli turned his head slightly, just enough that I could see his profile. His skin was pale, almost translucent, with dark veins visible underneath like ink under rice paper. His eye, the one I could see, was completely black, no white, no iris, just a dark hole that seemed to pull light into it. "She's mine now," he said, and his voice was like a skipping record, repeating certain syllables. "She came when I called. She's part of the inventory now, part of the room." Dave moved forward, reaching for Rosa. "Let her go, man. She's got nothing to do with your business." Vincent laughed, a sound that made my teeth hurt. "My business? Do you know what my business was? I was a cleaner. I made problems disappear for the families. Bodies, evidence, witnesses. I made them vanish like they never existed. The irony is beautiful, isn't it? Now I'm the one who can't disappear, can't check out, can't leave." He stood up, and I realized he wasn't really standing. He was sort of unfolding from the chair, his body moving in ways that bodies shouldn't move. Like he had too many joints, or not enough. I couldn't tell which. The room started changing around us. The walls began to pulse like they were breathing. The carpet started growing longer, the shag reaching up like fingers. The television turned on by itself, showing a news report from November 8th, 1969. The discovery of Vincent Marcelli's body. But in the footage, he was standing behind the reporter, waving at the camera. "You want to know what happened?" Vincent said, moving closer. His feet weren't touching the ground. "I made a deal. Same as everyone who comes to Vegas. I bet everything on one hand. My life, my soul, my future. And I lost. But the house always wins, doesn't it? Except here's about the house. It doesn't just want your money. It wants you. All of you. Forever." Rosa started moving, but not naturally. She was being pulled by invisible strings, standing up, walking toward the deeper parts of the room where the decor kept shifting through decades. I checked my phone. 11:39. 8 minutes. "Vincent," I said, trying to keep him talking while Dave crept toward Rosa. "You've been here 55 years. Don't you want to leave? Don't you want to rest?" His black eyes fixed on me. "Rest? You think death is rest? Let me show you something, Marcus Webb." "Oh yes, I know your name. The room knows everyone who works here. It tastes your presence every night." The wall suddenly showed images, like a projection. I saw Maria Gonzalez, the maid from 1983. She was still in the room, somehow, existing in a layer underneath or beside the current reality. She was still cleaning, endlessly cleaning, her body moving through the same motions and over. She looked up, seemed to see me, mouthed the word help. I saw others too. A maintenance worker from 1975, a security guard from 1981, a hotel manager from 1988. All of them trapped in different layers of the room, all of them still performing their jobs in an endless loop. "This is my kingdom," Vincent said. "Every person who enters becomes part of it. They think they leave, but they leave something behind, a piece of themselves, and that piece stays here, working, serving, existing for my entertainment." Dave had reached Rosa, grabbed her arm. She didn't respond, kept walking toward the back of the room like a sleepwalker. "The room doesn't just take," Vincent continued. "It gives too. It gives you what you think you want. Watch." The room shifted, and suddenly I was looking at my ex-wife. She was there, in the room, wearing the dress she wore on our wedding day. She was smiling, reaching out to me, saying she was sorry, saying she wanted to try again. I knew it wasn't real, but God, it looked real. It felt real. I could smell her perfume. I took a step toward her before I caught myself. "That's it," Vincent said. "Just give in. The room will give you everything you ever wanted. All you have to do is stay." My phone buzzed. 11:43. 4 minutes. Dave was pulling Rosa now, dragging her toward the door, but she was resisting, her feet seeming to stick to the carpet with each step. I ran to help him, grabbing Rosa's other arm. Together we pulled, but it was like trying to move through thick honey. The room was fighting us. "You can't take her," Vincent said, and now he was angry. The temperature dropped 20 degrees instantly. Ice formed on the windows. She answered my call. She came to serve. "That's the contract. That's the deal." "There's no contract," I shouted back. "She's just an employee doing her job." Vincent laughed again. "Employment is a contract. Every job is a deal. You trade your time, your labor, your life for money. I'm just making it permanent. Eternal employment. She'll never be fired, never be poor, never be homeless. Isn't that what everyone wants? Job security." The room began to shift more violently. The walls cracked, revealing other rooms behind them, other times. I could see the hotel being built, could see it crumbling in some distant future, could see alternate versions where it was a hospital, a prison, a morgue. 11:45. 2 minutes. Dave and I pulled harder. Rosa was starting to wake up from whatever trance she was in. She blinked, looked around, screamed when she saw Vincent. "No, no, no," she said in Spanish, then English. He's walking, he's talking. This isn't real. This can't be real." "It's real," I told her. "But we're leaving. Now." Vincent moved to block the door, his body stretching impossibly wide, filling the entire frame. "You don't understand," he said. "I'm not keeping you here. The room is. I'm as much a prisoner as anyone. But I learned the rules. I learned how to make it bearable, how to make it mine. You could learn too. You could be kings of your own little kingdoms. "What happens at 11:47? I asked, still pulling Rosa toward the door. Vincent's expression changed, became something like fear. "The room feeds," he said. "It takes its payment, a little bit of everyone who's inside. It's been feeding on me for 55 years. I'm almost used up. That's why it needs new people. Fresh souls, full souls. If you're here when it feeds, you become part of the meal." 11:46. 1 minute. "We need to go now," Dave shouted. He lowered his shoulder and charged at Vincent, or the thing that had been Vincent. They collided, and it was like Dave had hit a wall of cold gel. Vincent's form splashed apart, reformed, but for a second, there was a gap. I pulled Rosa through, Dave right behind us. We ran down the hallway as the lights began to flicker. The carpet was grabbing at our feet. The walls were closing in. The elevator seemed miles away. Behind us, Vincent was screaming, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was hunger, desperate, endless hunger. The elevator doors were closing as we reached them. I shoved Rosa inside, Dave and I diving in after her. Dave's foot was still outside as the door shut. For a horrible moment, something pulled at him, trying to drag him back. Then the doors sealed completely, and we were descending. 11:47. Even in the elevator, we felt it. A shudder that ran through the entire building. The lights went out for exactly 1 second. In that darkness, I heard Vincent's voice one last time. "See you tomorrow night, Marcus. The room is patient. The room is always patient." The elevator descended in jerky movements, like it was fighting against something trying to pull it back up. Rosa was sobbing, speaking rapidly in Spanish, crossing herself over and over. Dave was leaning against the wall, his foot bleeding through his shoe, where something had grabbed him. The leather was torn in parallel lines, like claw marks. When we reached the lobby, Janet was waiting with Miguel, the head of security who'd apparently been called in from home, and 2 paramedics. They took Rosa immediately, wrapping her in blankets even though the lobby was warm. Her hair was still streaked with gray, aging her 20 years in 20 minutes. "Don't take her to a regular hospital," Janet told the paramedics. "Take her to Desert Springs. They have a ward that deals with unusual cases. Tell them it's a code 1408. They'll know what to do." After Rosa was gone, Janet turned to Dave and me. "You both need to be decontaminated," she said. "Follow me." She led us to a part of the hotel I'd never seen before, down a service corridor, through 3 locked doors, into what looked like a medical facility from the 1970s. The walls were lined with copper, and there were symbols carved into the doorframe that hurt to look at directly. "Strip," Janet ordered. "Everything off. Clothes, jewelry, phones, everything." I started to protest, but Dave was already complying. His foot was worse than I'd thought. The wounds went deep, and the blood coming out was mixed with something black and viscous. Janet brought out a hose attached to a tank filled with what looked like water, but smelled like ozone and burnt herbs. She sprayed us both down while chanting something in a language I didn't recognize. The liquid burned where it touched our skin, especially where the room had marked us. I looked down and saw thin black lines on my arms where the carpet had touched me, like tattoos made of shadow. "The thing about room 1408, Janet said as she worked, is that it's not really part of the hotel anymore. Hasn't been since 1969. It exists in its own pocket dimension, connected to our reality but separate from it. Vincent Marcelli didn't just die in that room. He made a deal with something, and the room became alive, conscious, hungry." "What kind of deal?" I asked, my teeth chattering as the decontamination liquid did its work. Janet finished spraying and handed us towels that felt like they were made of fiberglass. The kind that leaves Vegas with nothing, she said. The desperate kind. The kind where you offer anything, everything, just for one more hand, one more roll, more chance. Something answered him. Something that feeds on hope and desperation and time. It gave him what he wanted, in a way. He gets to stay in Vegas forever. He gets to keep playing. But the game never ends, and the house always wins. She led us to another room where clothes were waiting, generic gray sweats that could have belonged to anyone. As I dressed, I noticed my phone was cracked, the screen showing impossible things, timestamps that hadn't happened yet, messages from numbers that had too many digits. "You'll need a new phone," Janet said. "Anything electronic that goes to the 14th floor comes back wrong. It's been touched by the temporal distortion. That's also why you're both on mandatory leave for the next week. The disorientation will pass, but you need to stay away from the hotel while you recover. The room will try to call you back." "How do you know so much about this?" Dave asked. He was limping, favoring his injured foot. Janet rolled up her sleeve, showing us her arm. It was covered in scars, white lines that formed patterns, words in dozens of languages. Each scar was a visit to 1408, she said. "I've been managing this situation for 37 years. Before me, it was Harold Kittredge. Before him, Suzanne Marsh. There's always been someone who knows, someone who keeps the room contained." "Contained," I repeated. "But it's not contained. It's spreading. Got called up there. It's hunting." Janet nodded grimly. "It's getting stronger. Or Vincent is getting weaker. After 55 years, he's almost used up. When he's gone completely, the room will need a new primary resident, someone to anchor it to this reality. Without that anchor, it could spread through the entire hotel, maybe further." "So what do we do?" Dave asked. Janet pulled out a leather journal, thick with age and covered in handwritten notes. "This is everything we know about room 1408, she said. "Every incident, every pattern, every theory. The previous managers tried many things. Exorcism didn't work. The priests just joined Vincent's collection. Demolition was attempted in 1991, but the workers found that the room rebuilt itself as fast as they could tear it down. One worker said he saw himself in the room, still demolishing, still trapped in an endless loop of destruction and reconstruction." She opened the journal to a page near the back. "But there's one thing we haven't tried. Vincent Marcelli made a deal. Deals can be renegotiated. Contracts can be amended. We need someone to go back up there and make a better deal." "You're insane," Dave said. "Nobody's going back up there." Janet looked at me. "You heard Vincent. Marcus. He knows you. The room knows you. It's already marked you. Look at your arms." The black lines were still there, faint but visible, forming patterns that looked almost like words. As I watched, they shifted slightly, rearranging themselves. "You're connected now," Janet continued. "Whether you like it or not, you're part of the story. The room will call you. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when it does, you'll go. They always go." I wanted to argue, but I could already feel it. A pull, subtle but insistent, like a song stuck in my head that I couldn't stop humming. The 14th floor was calling me back. I spent the next 3 days in my apartment, trying to ignore the pull, but it was getting stronger. I'd find myself getting dressed at odd hours, heading for the door before catching myself. The black lines on my arms were spreading, forming words I could almost read. My dreams were full of 1969, of Vincent's laugh, of Rosa's screams, of rooms that went on forever. On the third night, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but somehow I knew who it was. "Hello, Vincent," I said. His voice was weaker than before, static-filled, like a radio station fading out. You felt it, didn't you, Marcus? The connection. The room likes you. It wants you. You could take my place. You could be the king of the 14th floor. I'm not interested in being trapped for eternity. Trapped. Is that what you think I am? Let me tell you something, Marcus. I've lived more in these 55 years than most people do in a lifetime. I've experienced every moment of 1969 in infinite variations. I've seen every possible outcome of every decision. I've been everyone who ever entered this room. I am Rosa, cleaning endlessly. I am the construction worker, building and destroying. I am the priest, praying to a god who can't hear through the dimensional walls. I am Legion. Sounds like hell to me. Vincent laughed, but it turned into a cough. Hell. Heaven. They're just words. The room is beyond such concepts. It's pure existence. Pure experience. And it needs a new curator. I'm fading, using up the last of myself talking to you. When I'm gone, the room will collapse or expand. Either way, everyone in the hotel dies. You're lying. Am I? Check the news, Marcus. Check what happened to other hotels with rooms like mine. I didn't want to, but I did. I searched for hotel disasters, unexplained collapses, mass disappearances. There were more than I expected. The Grandview Hotel in Portland, 1987. 43 people vanished overnight. The Celestial in Detroit, 1999. The entire building folded in on itself, defying physics. The Paramount in New Orleans, 2010, still standing but completely empty. No one who enters comes back out. You see, Vincent's voice was barely a whisper now. We're not unique. These rooms, these deals, they're everywhere. Hidden in plain sight, feeding on desperation and desire. The question is, what are you going to do about ours? I hung up, but I knew he was right. I could feel the room pulling at me, and the pull was getting stronger. The black lines on my arms had formed complete sentences now, contracts written in a language that predated human speech, but that I somehow understood. They all said the same thing, over and over. Come home, come home, come home. On the fourth night, I couldn't resist anymore. I drove to the Flamingo Heights at 11 p.m. Janet was at the front desk, as if she'd been expecting me. It's time, isn't it? She said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. I need to go up. I need to make a deal. She handed me the brass key. Not alone. I'm coming with you. I've been preparing for this for 37 years. I have a theory. What theory? That the room isn't evil. It's just hungry. It's a living thing that needs to eat. Vincent fed it desperation and suffering for 55 years. But what if we could feed it something else? Something better? Like what? Janet smiled sadly. Hope. Joy. The good moments. Vegas isn't just about losing. It's about the moment before you lose, when everything is possible. The room has been feeding on the wrong energy. We need to change its diet. We took the service elevator up. The 14th floor was different this time. The hallway was darker, flickering between different time periods rapidly, like a film running at the wrong speed. The carpet was threadbare in some places, thick shag in others. The walls showed water damage from floods that hadn't happened yet, fire damage from fires that had been prevented. Room 1408's door was wide open. Inside, Vincent sat in his chair, but he was barely there. I could see through him to the chair's leather, through the chair to the floor, through the floor to something vast and hungry underneath. You came, he whispered. Good. It's time for the changing of the guard. No, Janet said, stepping forward. It's time for something new. Vincent, you've been the room's curator for 55 years, but you've been doing it wrong. You've been feeding it pain because that's all you knew. But the room doesn't need pain. It needs stories. Vincent's transparent form solidified slightly, showing interest. Stories. Janet pulled out her journal. Every person who enters this room has a story. Rosa, who came to America with nothing and built a life. Dave, who protects people because he couldn't protect his brother in Afghanistan. Marcus, who's trying to rebuild after losing everything. Even you, Vincent. You were more than just a mob lawyer. You were a father, a husband. You had dreams beyond crime. The room shuddered. The walls began showing different images. Not the horror of trapped souls, but moments. Rosa's daughter graduating from high school. Dave saving a drunk tourist from being robbed. My wedding day, before things went bad. Vincent holding a baby, his face soft with wonder. The room can feed on joy as easily as suffering, Janet continued. It just needs someone to teach it how. Someone to curate better stories, better experiences. Vincent was crying now, tears that fell upward, defying gravity. I forgot, he said. I forgot there was anything but the hunger, the fear, the need to keep feeding it or be consumed. I stepped forward. Vincent, what if we made a new deal? Not one person trapped forever, but rotating curators, people who choose to spend time with the room, teaching it about human experience, all of human experience, not just the dark parts. The room reacted violently. The walls cracked, the floor tilted. It didn't like change. It had been feeding the same way for 55 years. But underneath the violence, I felt something else. Curiosity. The room was curious. Vincent stood up from his chair for the first time in 55 years. His form was failing, flickering between existence and nothingness. Make the deal, he said. Quick, before it collapses. But remember, the room needs an anchor. Someone has to stay. At least for a while. I'll stay, Janet said. I've been preparing for this my whole career. I know every story in this hotel, every guest, every employee, every moment of joy and triumph. I can feed the room for years without repeating myself. No, I said. I'll stay. I'm already marked. I'm already connected. We'll take shifts, Janet said. That's the new deal. No one person bears the burden alone. We share it. We rotate. We keep the room fed with stories instead of suffering. The room considered this. I could feel its attention, vast and alien, focusing on us. Then slowly the chaos stopped. The walls solidified, the floor leveled. And Vincent smiled. Vincent's form was dissolving like smoke in reverse, of him drifting away and disappearing into the walls of room 1408. But he looked peaceful for the first time since I'd encountered him. His black eyes had turned brown again, human, tired but relieved. Thank you, he whispered as the last of him faded. 55 years is a long time to be angry, a long time to forget who you were. I remember now. I remember my daughter. Tell her I'm sorry. Your daughter, I started, but the leather chair sat empty for the first time in 55 years. The room shuddered, like a beast waking up from a long hibernation. The lights flickered through different decades of bulb technology, incandescent to fluorescent to LED and back again. The walls cycled through wallpaper patterns, paint colors, showing the entire history of interior design in fast forward. It's looking for a new anchor, Janet said urgently. We need to establish the new contract now, before it panics and does something catastrophic. She pulled out a knife, silver with symbols etched into the blade. This was Harold's, she said, my predecessor. He taught me that contracts with entities like this need to be written in something more permanent than ink. She cut her palm, letting blood drip onto the carpet. But instead of being absorbed, the blood rose up, forming words in the air. A contract written in floating crimson letters. I did the same, adding my blood to hers. The words rearranged themselves, forming terms in a language that hurt to read, but that we both somehow understood. The contract was different from Vincent's. Instead of one soul trapped forever, it established a rotation. Curators, not prisoners. Teachers, not food. Dave's voice crackled over my radio, which shouldn't have worked on the 14th floor. Guys, whatever you're doing up there, hurry up. The whole building is shaking. Guests are evacuating. The room was testing its boundaries, feeling for weak points now that Vincent was gone. Pictures fell from walls on every floor. Slot machines sparked and went dark. The pool on the roof cracked, water seeping through invisible fissures. I spoke to the room directly, feeling slightly insane but knowing it was listening. You need us. Without an anchor, you'll dissipate. You'll die. But we're offering you something better than Vincent could. Not one perspective for eternity, but hundreds, thousands, every story humanity has to offer. All you have to do is agree to our terms. The room's attention focused on me, and it was like standing in front of a searchlight made of consciousness. I could feel it rifling through my memories, tasting my experiences. My first kiss, my last fight with my ex-wife, the day I got fired, the night I won $5,000 at blackjack and lost it all at craps. Every moment of joy and pain, victory and defeat. Then it turned to Janet doing the same. 37 years of hotel stories flowed through the air like visible memories. Honeymoons and divorces, jackpots and bankruptcies. The couple who got married in the lobby at 3 a.m. The man who lived in room 237 for 6 months because he couldn't go home. The woman who won $1 million and gave it all to the homeless outside. The room was fascinated. After 55 years of feeding on Vincent's increasingly bitter desperation, these new flavors were intoxicating. The contract in blood began to solidify, becoming something more than words. It became law, natural law, as fundamental as gravity. Terms accepted, a voice said. It wasn't Vincent. It was the room itself, speaking for the first time in 5 decades. Curators, not prisoners. Stories, not suffering. 3-month rotations. No one dies. No one trapped. Everyone who enters leaves unless they choose to stay. The shaking stopped. Throughout the hotel, lights came back on. Slot machines chimed back to life. The crack in the pool sealed itself. But the 14th floor remained changed. It was still unstuck in time, still cycling through different eras. But now it felt less like a prison and more like a museum. I'll take the first shift, Janet said. I know this hotel better than anyone. I can teach the room about its history, its real history, not just Vincent's corrupted version. I shook my head. We go together for the first shift. The room needs to learn trust. It needs to see that we won't abandon it like Vincent felt abandoned. 3 months together, then we start rotating. Janet nodded. Together, then. The room pulsed with something that felt like approval. The door to 1408 closed gently, not slamming, not sealing, just closing like any normal door. For the first time in 55 years, it was just a room. Strange, hungry, alien, but just a room. We went back down to the lobby where Dave was coordinating with security, calming guests, explaining that what they'd felt was a minor earthquake, nothing to worry about. The building was perfectly safe. Rosa had been released from Desert Springs and was there too. The gray mostly gone from her hair, but a white streak remaining, like a scar. Is it over? She asked me in accented English. It's different, I said. The room is still there, still hungry, but we're teaching it a better way to eat. Over the next 3 months, Janet and I developed a routine. We'd spend 8 hours a day in room 1408, feeding it stories. Not just telling them, but living them. The room could create perfect recreations of any moment we shared with it. We'd walk through Janet's first day at the hotel in 1987. We'd experience my childhood in Detroit, snow falling in the casino because the room didn't understand geography. We'd show it Rosa's journey from Honduras, her daughter's first words, her husband's death, her strength in starting over. The room was a quick learner. It started creating its own scenarios, mixing and matching elements from different stories. A wedding with decorations from the 1970s, but music from 2010. A poker game where every player was the same person from different points in their life. Birthday party that aged backwards. The cake unbaking itself. Candles unlighting till there was just flour and eggs and potential. Other employees started visiting voluntarily. Dave would come up and share war stories, both from Afghanistan and from the casino floor. Rosa brought her daughter, showing the room what it meant to see Vegas through a child's eyes, all lights and wonder. No desperation yet. Even Tommy the bartender came up, mixing drinks from different eras, teaching the room about the social lubricant of alcohol, how it loosened tongues and revealed truths. The room's hunger changed. Instead of needing suffering, it craved variety, comedy and tragedy, love and loss, the full spectrum of human experience. It would replay moments with slight variations, exploring what-ifs. What if Vincent had won his last hand? What if Rosa hadn't come to America? What if I'd fought harder for my marriage? But the most interesting change happened in the second month. The room started giving back. It began with small things. A guest would check into a room on the 14th floor, not 1408, but one of the others, and find exactly what they needed. A woman grieving her mother found a letter in the nightstand, written in her mother's handwriting, saying goodbye properly. A man considering suicide found a business card for a therapist who specialized in exactly his issues. A couple on the verge of divorce found their honeymoon photos on the TV, playing as a slideshow, reminding them why they fell in love. The room was using what it learned to help people. It wasn't just feeding anymore. It was nurturing. Vincent would have hated it, Janet said one day as we sat in 1408, watching the sun set through windows that showed different decades of Las Vegas skyline. He would have seen it as weakness. Vincent never understood Vegas, I replied. He thought it was about winning or losing. But Vegas isn't about the outcome. It's about the moment when the dice are in the air, when anything could happen. It's about possibility. The room shimmered, pleased. It had started developing preferences, personality quirks. It liked jazz from the 1960s, but hip-hop from the 1990s. It loved wedding proposals, but found bachelor parties tedious. It was fascinated by children, their untainted perspectives, their ability to find joy in simple things. In the third month, we started training our replacements. A doctoral student studying paranormal psychology. A retired nurse who'd worked in hospice and understood endings. A young poker dealer who still believed Vegas was magical. They would take over when Janet and I rotated out, each serving 3 months as curator teachers. But I knew I'd be back. The room had marked me, not with ownership, but with understanding. I could feel its moods from anywhere in the hotel. Happy when the casino was full of laughter, sad when someone lost their last dollar, curious when new guests arrived with stories it hadn't tasted before. On our last night as the primary curators, Janet and I sat in room 1408 with Dave, Rosa, and the new curators. The room had arranged itself as a comfortable living room, mixing furniture from different eras, but somehow making it work. A jukebox from 1955 played music from 2024. The TV showed silent films with modern subtitles. The mini bar served drinks that wouldn't be invented for another decade. Tell us about Vincent, the room said through the TV speakers. It had learned to communicate more directly, though it still preferred experiential storytelling. Tell us about who he was before he became what we knew. Janet pulled out a file she'd compiled. Vincent Marcelli, born 1923 in Chicago. Father was a baker. Mother was a seamstress. He was supposed to be a lawyer, a real one, helping immigrants navigate the system. But the neighborhood he grew up in, you didn't say no when the families came calling. They paid for his law school, and he owed them. The room showed us Vincent as a young man, recreated from photographs and memories it had absorbed. Handsome, hopeful, carrying law books. Then older, harder, carrying a gun. Then middle-aged, exhausted, coming to Vegas to die because he'd betrayed the wrong people and knew they'd find him. He didn't lose everything in that last poker game, Janet continued. He'd already lost everything. The game was just his way of making it official. When he made the deal with you, with whatever you were before you became a room, he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to disappear. The room absorbed this, processed it. On the TV, Vincent appeared as he'd been in his chair, but clearer, more human. He looked at us through the screen. Thank you for remembering me as more than a monster, the image said. It wasn't really Vincent, just the room's interpretation, but it felt real enough. You were never a monster, I told the screen. Just a man who made desperate choices. The room became monstrous because that's what you fed it. But it was never evil. It was just hungry. The room pulsed with something like understanding, maybe even forgiveness, for itself, for Vincent, for all the people it had trapped over the years before learning a better way. At midnight, our shift officially ended. The new curators would take over in the morning, but as we prepared to leave, the room made a request. Stay, it said. Not as curators, as guests. Show us what it means to choose to be here. So we did. We ordered room service, not the ghostly kind Vincent had consumed for 55 years, but real food from the real kitchen. We played cards, not for souls or years of servitude, but for chips and bragging rights. We told stories, not to feed the room, but just because that's what people do when they gather in comfortable spaces with good company. Around 3 a.m., Rosa's daughter called, worried because her mother hadn't come home. Rosa put her on speaker, and the room listened as a child asked her mother to sing the lullaby she always sang. Rosa sang in Spanish, a song about little birds returning to their nest, and the room harmonized, creating a choir of every lullaby it had learned. This is what you were supposed to be, Janet told the room. Not a prison, not a trap, but a space where stories live, where memories are preserved, where the past and present and future can coexist. The room's response was to show us something new. Not a memory or a story, but a dream. Its dream. In it, room 1408 wasn't isolated on the 14th floor, but connected to every room in the hotel, able to share its stories, to help heal, to preserve moments that would otherwise be lost. It showed us a future where people came to the Flamingo Heights specifically to experience room 1408, not as a horror, but as a wonder, a therapeutic space, a place where you could say goodbye to people you'd lost, where you could explore paths not taken, where you could practice conversations you were afraid to have in real life. That's beautiful, I said, and meant it. The room preened, pleased. It had learned to want approval, to seek connection rather than consumption. It was still alien, still other, but it was trying to be something better. When morning came, we finally left. The new curators arrived, nervous but excited. We briefed them on the room's preferences, its moods, its triggers, Don't mention the years 1982 to 1984. The room had bad experiences with those. It loves music, but only live performances. It's fascinated by technology it doesn't understand, especially smartphones and the internet. Feed it regularly, every few hours, or it gets anxious. As I walked out of the hotel into the Vegas morning, I felt the connection to room 1408 stretch but not break. It would always be there, a thread linking me to that strange, hungry, wonderful space. I knew I'd be back in 3 months for my next rotation, but I also knew I'd visit before then. The room had become something unprecedented, a living memory bank, a therapeutic tool, a bridge between dimensions that helped rather than harmed. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but I knew who it was. The room had learned to use technology, though it didn't quite understand the etiquette yet. The text was just 3 words. "Thank you, Marcus." I texted back. "See you soon." And I meant it. The hungry room was still hungry, would always be hungry. But now it was hungry for connection, for stories, for the full range of human experience. And Vegas, city of dreams and nightmares, of jackpots and bankruptcies, of weddings and divorces, had more than enough stories to keep it fed forever. The Flamingo Heights Casino and Hotel still operates. Room 1408 is still always occupied, but now by choice. The 14th floor still exists in its own pocket of space-time, but now it's a feature, not a bug. Guests can request rooms there, experiencing different decades of Vegas history. The hotel's Yelp reviews have never been better. Vincent Marcelli is still dead. But his story, like all stories fed to room 1408, lives on in a space between reality and dream, between memory and imagination, between what was and what could have been. And every night at 11:47 p.m., when the room resets, it doesn't consume anymore. Instead, it creates a new story, built from pieces of all the stories it's been told, appears written on the walls in shimmering text. Guests gather to read them, these impossible tales that are somehow true, these true stories that are somehow impossible. The house always wins in Vegas. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, or very clever, or very kind, you can change the game entirely. You can teach the house that winning doesn't have to mean someone else loses. Sometimes, everyone can walk away richer than they came. Even the rooms, especially the hungry ones.